So I think it's safe now to say hello, Bethany. Nice to see you again.
So lovely to see you too.
And nice of you to accept our invitation to talk a bit about the secure attachment in such unsecure times.
Yes, absolutely. My pleasure and honor. Honestly, I feel so incredibly helpless and heartbroken over here in the United States, and reached out to you to see if I might be able to be of help in some way. And my husband and I are still talking about maybe going over and to Romania and just, anything, helping, just like hand out diapers, like whatever needs to happen. With the refugee crisis from Ukraine, it's just so devastating. So anything I can do to be helpful is, an honor.
Whenever you decide to come here, we will assist in every way we can as well.
Thank you.
Until then, let's do what you know best for now.
Yeah.
So you've been studying attachment, the science of attachment, for over 10 years prior to writing your book, The Strange Situation, the journey of a
mother's journey into the
into the science of attachment. Sorry, the Romanian titles is somehow different, and I always translate it back and forth.
No. What is it in Romanian?
It's a science of attachment, basically, and it's a science of attachment prior, and then the explanation. We have your book on Pagina de Psihologie in our shop.
Yeah.
And it's doing great. I'm pleased to tell you. So we live in a strange situation for quite some time now. First with the COVID pandemics, now with the Ukrainian war. And I was curious and searched data about the wars we have, ongoing wars we have right now. So according to ACLED, I think it's pronounced, the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, the last month we had some over 8,000 events, battles, riots, explosions, violence against civilians, with almost 13,000 fatalities. So I would ask you, from your perspective, and given that you studied the science of attachment for so long, how can one form a secure attachment in such an unsecure world we're living in right now?
Yeah, well, it's really freaking hard. That's one of the reasons why this kind of situation is so devastating. Setting aside the obvious violence, physical violence, living under threat, the trauma of living in a war zone, and the insecurity, the poverty, the ill health. I mean, there are so many reasons. And not being able to maintain a thread of a secure attachment ruptures are another terrible thing that happens in war. Now, from my perspective, one of the things that has been so strangely heartwarming for me, watching from afar the events unfold in Ukraine, is how, let me see, I want to make sure I say this correctly because it could sound really strange, but the fact that there has been so much heartbreak about the dissolution of families, so much heartbreak about, certain members of the family, oftentimes men, going to fight, and women and the children leaving. And so much fear and sadness about losing loved ones, to me, speaks to the strength of those attachments. Because an insecure person doesn't care. An insecurely attached family is not heartbroken when they have to separate. So, again, I'm not saying that this is a good thing, obviously, but I have been so filled with, just the wonder of the human heart, the human condition, to see the devastation on that deeply personal level, even in such a time, to just say, I don't want you to go because I love you. That speaks to the incredibly raw and powerful expression of our attachment systems. And so with that said, because so often children, because attachment, happens in childhood and of course continues into adulthood, when children are separated from one of their caregivers, this is devastating and can be traumatic, but having the safe haven and the secure base of one caregiver, even in times of great tragedy and turbulence, can really maintain a secure attachment. So, one of the incredible things about attachment is that nothing is required really, but delight from the caregiver. And so, I've seen quite a bit of, video and things of, people really trying so hard to maintain a space that is child friendly for these refugee children. And, the people who, this is why I'm so drawn to come and try to help, just trying to maintain some pleasure, some delight, some security, some color.
Normal, let's say.
Exactly. But normal from an emotional point of view. That's what I find so beautiful and stunning about this thing that I'm watching. It's like people aren't just trying to make sure that their kids are fed. That would be pre-attachment. That's the way people thought about what children needed before John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth came and changed the world. They thought all children really need is food and shelter.
Yeah.
And so now we see the narrative of what's happening in Ukraine is the among many other things, is the horror of families being divided and of children being in a state of emotional upset. This is a changed narrative from the end of World War II, when John Bowlby began doing his work, when there were orphans all over Europe, and most of the caregivers really thought all they needed was food and shelter and that they would be fine. And he came along and said, no, these children are grieving their parents, and we need to pay attention to them as emotional beings, as people who have lost a relationship. And so again, I'm watching this in awe of how far we've come. We are understanding now that this is for these children to be separated from their loved ones, to be in a state of insecurity. Yes, they might have food and they might have shelter, but that's not enough. And so that's sort of a bright, a silver lining, if you will, that we get that things have changed since World War II.
The thing is, as you said, basically the mothers were forced to flee the country with their children. What are they supposed to tell their children about the fathers not being with them and staying to fight for their country? What could the mother say to her child in order to make him feel better in this situation of conflict? And
yeah, I mean, I can't say from any kind of an expert point of view, but I can say if this was my family, I would say it depends on the age of the child, how much detail you want to give. But I would always come back to, I'm here and we're going to figure this out together, and you're safe and I'm not going to abandon you. And your dad is doing a wonderful thing to protect you.
But can you tell a child you're safe if he sees around, I don't know, bombing, or
right.
He's hearing the news about his hometown being devastated by war, or hears his elder brother talking? Can you tell this to a child without lying?
Right. Well, that's an amazing question. I think the answer that I would try to give, again, it depends on the age of the child, would be, we have each other. We're here together. That's the important story that, and you hear these stories all the time about people who have suffered through tremendous trauma, and they had a caregiver who said, I'm here with you. That's what I mean by safe. we're not safe from shelling. We're not safe from insane people. We're never safe. I mean, obviously we're in an extreme situation in Ukraine right now, but like, nobody is safe in the world. And yet we find security in relationship. And so I would really keep coming back home to that. If I were in that situation, to be reminding my daughter, I am here with you and I am never going to forget about you. I'm never going to leave you. I'm never going to abandon you. Like, you are my priority. I am going to do everything I can for us to stay together and for me to protect you. That is really important. Children need to feel protected.
Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, over 2 million children have been forced to flee the country, UNICEF says. Another 2.5 million are estimated to be internally displaced in Ukraine, taking the total number of children forced out of their homes to 4.5 million, up to 60% of the whole children population of Ukraine. Does this mean all these children will have an insecure attachment in the long run? And according to the theory of attachment, that this is something inheritable, let's say, does this mean their children will have an insecure attachment as well?
Right. I mean, it's a great question. I certainly can't answer that again from like a professional research point of view, because I haven't studied, this kind of displacement, but I can, from what I do know, and again, as a mother who's studied attachment for a long time, I would say, shockingly, no. It's not a guarantee that you're going to have a generation of insecurely attached people because they are with a caregiver. Okay. So, compare this to World War II, where both of the parents were gone, and they were in orphanages where they didn't believe that children needed love and affection and attention. They thought all they needed was food and shelter. Yeah. That is a recipe for a generation of insecurely attached children. What we have now is a generation of certainly traumatized children, but the wonderful thing about attachment is that it protects us against lifelong trauma, because when you are with your caregiver, it's the greatest, it's just this incredible armor against the violence of the world. Mm-hmm. And so yes, parents are going to be incredibly stressed and upset, but I have just been blown away by the grace that I have seen with these mothers taking their children in these extreme situations. And so I would say, no, the protector, that protector model, even when a parent doesn't feel confident that they actually can protect, bringing that heart of protection into the child's life through words, through actions, repeating that is a way to really protect them and generations to come from insecurity running rampant. Insecurity in life is not the same as attachment insecurity.
Please elaborate.
There are many, many people who have all the comforts of the world: money, wealth, medical care, education, have access to the absolute best things, and they're terribly, woefully, insecurely attached, meaning they don't have access to their emotions. They don't have access to other people's emotions. They can't move through emotional upset. Trauma hits them in really profound ways and they can't recover. They're lacking resilience. They're lacking grit, but they have everything, that they could ever want physically, materially. Likewise, many, many, many people, remember, 65% of humanity is considered securely attached, and we know the variety of ways people live. Now, of course, in a war zone, this is turned up to an extreme degree because of stress and trauma and violence. Yeah. So again, this is not to suggest that this is a normalized, neutralized place, but just extrapolating from what we do see. There are people who are living families of 15 in one room with no
Yeah.
running water, and they could certainly be all securely attached because they have a sense that their caregiver is protected, is protecting them and delights in them. And, attachment is such a simple, it's subtle and it's deep, but it's so much sort of simpler and more accessible than people think that it is. And so in this case, that is a good thing.
There are studies like war exposure, attachment style, and moral reasoning conducted after the war in Kosovo, or the impact of the Yemeni civil war on child attachment style conducted by UNICEF in the 2020. Showing that the war impacts the attachment style and compromises the psychological development in children. As apparently we have no way of stopping the wars happening worldwide. What can we do as parents, as caregivers, to minimize their damaging effects on children in terms of attachment?
Yeah, well, the thing that parents always need to do is to put their own oxygen mask on.
Yeah.
And to take care of themselves as much as they possibly can, and to get the emotional support that they need, because it does get passed down. And that's why children are so impacted, because their parents are so impacted. So yes, seeing violence, yes, losing loved ones, yes, all of that is obviously incredibly disruptive to anybody's system. And especially when you're young and you can't get over certain things that you see and experience. But with parents as protectors, the parent needs to be supported, and that's where things go awry. So to be supportive of parents, if people are wondering what to do, to be supportive of the parent so that they can parent the children under these extreme circumstances, that is a really exponentially helpful way of helping generations.
The Romanians are first-hand witnesses to this war, which is in very close proximity to us. And over 630,000 Ukrainians sought refuge in our country, many of them living with their small children in Romanian households. How can we, as hosts, let's say, in this unfortunate situation, can help the families in order to provide a secure place for them to be in?
Yeah, well, it's such a beautiful question, and I think it goes to what we're just talking about, providing a safe place for the parents to
specifically vent. What can we do? Because we have the best of intentions, and often we do damage by asking the simplest and stupidest questions, such as, don't you miss your husband? Or the reporters, they were asking the children, when was the last time you saw your daddy? Of course, the child would start to cry. So we are trying to help. We are trying to build a capital of empathy for these people. But oftentimes we are doing much damage instead of helping. So in concrete terms, how can we conduct in a manner that is helpful and not damaging for them?
Well, if I had the answer to that question, goodness, this is how can any of us ever behave? It's always going to be so particular to the circumstance, but generally speaking, a cycle, empathy travels through people, and it starts with self-compassion. Okay. So the hosts need to be compassionate to themselves, okay, and understand that they are not going to get it right all the time. They're going to say dumb things. Their heart is in the right place. And so when we connect as hosts to our own true good nature, to our best intentions, and then when we make mistakes, we, instead of clutching and freaking out and saying a bunch of dumber things, which is, what we do when we get nervous, we can be more relaxed. Look, if I could recommend anything, it's unrealistic, but, if you're really going to push for something concrete, I would say everybody needs to learn to meditate.
Okay.
Even for 5 minutes, learning to watch your mind and feel your sensations is, there's nothing more effective in learning how to stop the flow of extreme thoughts and the kinds of, because people ask those quote dumb questions because they're nervous.
Yeah.
They're not, and they just don't know.
Yeah, actually, you don't really know how to behave in such a situation. You said in your book that having an insecure attachment, it's not a lifelong sentence, let's say, yes?
Right.
Assuming the world would inflict such an attachment style onto a child, is this process reversible? Is this process...
Absolutely.
How?
Yeah.
What can one do? Okay, now it's a stranger situation because of the war, and supposedly they will need much therapy afterwards, and they will have PTSD and such other serious diagnosis. But how, in normal times, can one reverse the insecure attachment sentence, let's say?
Yeah, well, it is through self-reflection. And people do that in many ways. Therapy, meditation, self-study, deep friendships. Secure attachment is the ability to reflect on your thoughts and feelings. That is what a secure attachment gives us. And so learning how to value relationships, learning how to value feelings, learning how to recognize your feelings. These are all the things that will, move the needle on your own attachment system as you grow. And then when you have a child of your own, you are going to be more capable of providing that for your child. It's not, it's just all attachment really comes down to is the ability to, it's a capacity. It's a capacity. A secure attachment gives a person a larger capacity to go through their emotions. And so you can see why in a situation like this, children who have secure attachments are going to be in a better position to be able to tolerate and protect against the trauma that is coming their way. So this is, why it's so important to provide, places for the adults in these children's lives to be able to let down their guard and to be able to talk about what's going on with a trained professional, maybe not the host who isn't skilled and maybe doesn't know exactly how to ask the right question, but also, being able to take a risk, being willing to take a risk. And sometimes what might be the wrong question for one person is the right question for someone else. With children, generally, you don't want to ask too many direct questions about their feelings because they're not little adults and they can't answer us and they can't process in the way that we do. And so with children, it's always best to just provide a lot of care, a lot of attention about how they're feeling, what they want, what they need, what they like, and just try to provide some creature comforts in that way. But I wouldn't go directly into asking them about their experience because they can't take that in.
There was a very impressive, for me at least, thing that happened. Some custom in Romania. They were calling this toy bridge. People from Romania were coming to this bridge and they were placing toys on that bridge so that children could pick up a toy. I don't know much about security items for children, but I understand there is such a thing, favorite blanket, a favorite toy, a favorite. So is this really helpful?
Absolutely. Anything that is going to help children feel seen, heard, loved, and taken in and attuned to is going to be wonderfully helpful. Yes. So attunement is what is the kind of engine of attachment. So learning how to attune. So instead of asking questions about, what happened to your dad? You could ask questions about, what do people like? What are people, adults and children? What's their favorite TV show? What are they, it might not be the right question when they don't have access to anything, but just like getting to know the person is a much better way to attune to them than asking them direct questions about what happened. But yeah, having, for kids to feel like people see them, either the people who are hosting them, their parents, or the larger order culture, that is hugely impactful. Absolutely.
What about a situation where, because a secure attachment, in order for a secure attachment to be built, you need quality parenting, let's say. We have a dog. We have a dog over there. We had a dog. So you need quality parenting. In such troubled times, no one really cares about quality parenting. And what about the cases when the mother crumbles, let's say, because it's normal.
Of course.
So what about this situation? How can she recover in order to be present for her child or her children to strengthen their bond and offer them a secure attachment?
It's really tough. But she needs support. But rupture and repair go together. So to remind people, it's normal. A secure attachment is full of ruptures and repairs, full of them. It's the repair that matters. It's like, mommy had a really rough moment. I'm sorry if that was scary. I'm here now. What would you like to do? What can we do? What would you like? How are you feeling? Talk to me about how that felt. Just like making that connection. The thing that we want to avoid is pretending that things aren't happening.
And everything is all right and normal.
Exactly. Because that is very confusing for kids and for anybody.
There's a movie I've never seen, actually. I never saw, actually, La Vita è Bella. But I understand it's pretty much the way a father tries to camouflage the horror of words for his child, pretending like everything is okay. I don't know if this is really what's going on in the movie. But when I heard about it, I thought I was torn, because on one hand, I thought it's a very nice gesture to do for your child.
Totally. Yeah.
And on the other hand, I thought it's somehow cruel, because I don't know if in the end you die, you can't really, explain that's not a game anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. Again, this is all just me as a parent. I'm not the scientist who's answering this from like a research point of view, but my sense is that, it's a combination of trying to create like I was saying in the beginning, a somewhat normal experience for kids. And at the same time, recognizing like this is anything but normal. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've really missed daddy, and you miss your school, and my God, I just cannot imagine. So, we don't want children to feel like they're supposed to like put on a good face.
Yeah.
Because that's impossible, and they will really, they
won't trust the adults anymore. I suppose,
I think that's
because
part of it.
Children are not dumb.
No.
They know that everything is wrong, nothing is right now for them.
Yeah, no, it's so painful. And I think if we just keep coming back to the relationships that they do have, and, it's like during COVID, everything fell apart, but, kids still had their parents, as difficult as that was. I think that was a savior for a lot of kids. In fact, I remember during COVID, people saying that the adults were saying that they were going crazy. The kids were happy because they were at home with their parents all the time. And for many kids of a certain age where it's developmentally appropriate, that's all they really want. Yeah. They want their parents' attention. So that was really interesting. And so if, as much as we can remember, the sunlight for a child is an adult's attention. it matters less what we say than how we feel. So if you're asking questions because you're nervous and because you can't connect with your own feelings of fear and your own insecurity, that's what's going to come through to the child. But if you're really open-hearted and just feeling like you want to feel the person and you want to love them and you want to delight in them, that will come through. Even if you ask a dumb question, it's not, like Maya Angelou said, people don't remember what you said, it's how you made them feel.
That's interesting and nice. I was going to ask you about the silver lining in the midst of all this situation, but you actually answered this before I had the chance to ask you. You practice mindfulness a lot for many, many years now. Is there a small exercise you could recommend for mothers and children to do on a daily basis? A simple one?
Sure. My favorite is just counting your breath.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. You sit in a quiet place. Well,
yes,
it doesn't need to be quiet. You can quiet your body, and you want to put your feet on the ground. Take a deep breath, let it out, and then just focus on your breath. And when you do your in breath, you count 1, and your out breath, count 2. And you count up to 10, and immediately your thoughts are going to come flooding in, and you're not going to make it even to 1.5. And then you just let that go, and you start again at 1. And you set a timer. You do it for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. And you can sit wherever. You don't have to sit on a cushion in any kind of funny posture, just like anything, because it just focuses your attention. And breathing, is an incredibly regulating thing to do. And
do you hold your child's hand or not? It's an individual
thing. Absolutely.
You can?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. You could. I used to do it with Azalea on my lap.
That's nice.
Yeah. And then when she didn't want to move, and when she wanted to move, I would let her move. You don't want to force it. And sometimes children take to that, sometimes they don't. So there are many, different ways to do that. But I think the most important thing is for the mothers to do it. I wouldn't worry about the children practicing mindfulness because they're pretty mindful as it is. It's the adults that need to practice mindfulness. And a really important thing to remember is that mindfulness doesn't mean feeling peaceful. It means feeling exactly what you're feeling. And that can include terror, sadness, horror, confusion, the things that are really difficult to feel. The reason we practice mindfulness is to allow those things in. Because when we don't metabolize our feelings, we will lash out.
Haunt us after. They will come back and haunt us for the better part of our life.
Exactly. And so we need to do that for our children. We need to model that, and we are their resource. And so if we are processing our own feelings through mindfulness, talking to people, just having a quiet moment, there's so many things, but those things will impact our children incredibly. That's where a secure attachment comes from, is the parent's ability to feel what's going on for them.
Does the science of attachment say anything about the way a disconnected mother is building an insecure attachment for her child? Are there specific behaviors, Are there specific behaviors that inflict such an insecure attachment, or is this something built in time, repeated patterns, repeated behaviors?
Absolutely repeated over time. Absolutely repeated over time. And I don't want to focus on mothers' behaviors that create insecure attachment. Okay. I would much rather focus on how women can take care of themselves.
Okay.
Because not in order to help their children, because women actually deserve care regardless of their child state. But when women are resourced and taking care of themselves and have the capacity to feel their feelings and be heard and seen by a caregiving other, whether it's a friend, a spouse, anybody, they are in a better position to do that for their child.
You are right. Actually, we have this custom of blaming ourselves for our shortcomings. We see them as such, but in truth, it's only natural that we react the way we react sometimes. So, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't focus on on what we do wrong, but
Especially
instead of
women.
what we, yeah, especially as
Especially
women.
mothers, especially mothers who are facing the evil of this patriarchal war. I mean, are you kidding? This is not the time to say women are doing anything wrong.
True. That's true. My bad. It was a
No,
dumb question.
I don't mean it. No, we all do it. It's what we grow up in. This is what we do. So, but I would like to flip that to say women can help other women connect with.
I think it was a reverse question, actually, you know, because in the back of my mind, there was exactly this, that we oftentimes blame ourselves for all the things we think we do wrong. So I was asking the question in reverse. Are we doing such a terrible job, actually? Yeah. A word of encouragement for mother and children.
Yes, please, please, please encourage mothers and children. Yes.
What we should tell them right now about this world, about their brighter, hopefully, future.
I would say they have absolutely everything they need to help their children through this, even in the face of this freaking nightmare. They have what they need because their children really just need their attention sometimes, not all the time. And their children will understand. Their children will forgive the blow-ups and the ignorings and the stress. That means, you know how adults always focus on the negative instead of the positive? Children are the exact opposite. They will drink in all the delight and all the attention, all the warmth and all the protection and all the good stuff.
That they felt during these times?
Pardon me?
That they felt during these times?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the rest, yes, they're going to have a lot to deal with. But the fact that they felt loved and protected sometimes in such a state, that will go a long way to help them process whatever they're going to need to process. So I would say, do not underestimate the power of, you know, those small gestures of and expressions of love and protection and delight, even in the midst of these, you know, nightmarish times.
Do we have any way to predict how the reconnection with their fathers would be in the future?
Well, that's really interesting because that's a very large scale, strange situation, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't say, but, you know, there are too many factors. There's so much, but certainly the more a child is feeling loved and protected and delighted in this traumatic situation, the more easily they will be able to reconnect. Now, of course, the fathers are going to have a lot. They're going to need a lot of help. And so, you know, it's going to be really difficult, really, really difficult. And so that's why it's so important for the women to be strong in their, you know, in their emotional, in their affection. Don't underestimate the power of their simple affection, even if it's just for a second in the midst of this nightmare. You know, you're so insecure, you don't know what's going on. And I can't relate to this. I'm not saying that I've been there. I have never been there. I can only imagine that in such a state, you know, when you think to tell your child how much you love them, that they will hear you.
For you personally, I know we talked a lot about this the last time we did our interview, but it's been another year, so maybe the things settle down a bit. For you personally, what's the most precious thing you learned from studying this theory of attachment and taking the I test and such?
What's the most precious thing? I think it's still the same thing. I don't remember what I said last year, but having confidence that I have what it takes to be a loving person to myself, to my daughter, to my husband, to the world, that my edginess, my craziness, my insecurity, all my stuff is not getting in the way. It's just part of it. It's the way that I do me. And that is true for everybody, that there's no personality trait that is going to make it impossible for you to love well.
I don't want to put you in a blind spot here or in a difficult situation, but I'm wondering, because everybody I was talking to these days has an opinion about Putin and Zelensky, for instance. From the theory of attachment perspective, what kind of attachment would you say Putin has?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Zelensky seems incredibly secure. Like, oh my gosh, he's so capable of like dealing with difficult emotions and coming out on top. And I mean, he is a rock star to me. Putin obviously is like a disorganized, very complicated person who, I mean, I really can't say, but it certainly seems like he has some serious mental health problems. And to me, the sad thing, the tragic thing is not about Putin, because he's one person, but about all the support that he has to be able to unleash like this. That's the part that scares me. I mean, we're always going to have outlier madmen, but when we have governments in support and publics in support, that's when things get really scary.
Okay, back to the optimism, please.
Yeah, I know.
I asked the question, I'm to blame. So the final words on this topic for today would be?
Like I said, this is to mothers specifically, because they're with their children in that intense situation, to not underestimate two things. One, the importance of them having support, emotional support, where they get to talk, put their feelings into words, feel connected, and the power of their affection, however it comes out for them. Affection doesn't look the same for everybody, and children know that. Children get it. They know when their mothers are expressing their true nature. And that's all they ask. That's all they want. That's all they need. And so to just really, if there was ever a time to forgive yourself for everything you've ever done wrong, in quotes, and to just be your best self now, this is the time. And to trust that it's enough. All your kids want is you. They want you exactly as you are. And that is a very tough thing for us women to understand, because we are so hard on ourselves and we think, how could we possibly be enough? But the incredible thing about being a mother is that we are enough for our children, even in our darkest days.
I feel uplifted somehow by these words. Thank you very much for your time and your knowledge and your encouragements. And please keep us posted with your plans.
Yes. I mean, I wonder if there's any way, if I did come, if there's any way I would love to be able to talk to mothers.
There sure is.
You think so?
Yes.